If you've ever been to Georgia, the metro Atlanta area, there's a highway called Georgia 400. And it runs up from the downtown Atlanta area up to the northern Republican suburbs. And there's a stop on the road called Lenox Road. And at Lenox Road are the two prestige malls. They're where the Apple store is and the Gucci store. And all the Nordstroms and the Saks Fifth Avenue and all the fancy stores are there. Well, Georgia 400 is a toll road, only one-way toll, and no tolling for the exits. It's just one toll stand. And the developers of Georgia 400 put that toll road just north of Lenox Road. So when all the rich people who live in the northern suburbs wanted to drive down to Gucci and Saks Fifth Avenue, they had to pay the toll. And the government always said that toll road would go away once the road was paid for. Well, the road was paid for several times over. And the toll, it was only 50 cents. It never went away. When my wife and I got married, Christy had to have a prophylactic mastectomy early on. That means she had to have a double mastectomy, not because she had breast cancer, but because we knew, given her genes, she was going to get it. And we would have to go through the toll at Georgia 400. And I never realized for a long time when she was going through the reconstruction process how my acceleration through the toll would cause her all sorts of agony. I never realized that. She knew I loved to slam on the gas the moment the gate opened, and she never said anything. Well, a number of years ago, we had a governor. His name was Nathan Deal. He had been a Democrat in Congress, became a Republican, ultimately ran for governor of Georgia. And he wanted to do transportation initiatives in the state of Georgia. And he essentially wanted to divide the state into regions, and each region could collaborate on plans, and then through those plans, get the voters to agree to a tax to pay for the plans, and the tax would expire over time. Well, people used the toll booth and said, wait a second. Look at Georgia 400. That toll booth should have been torn down years ago, and they've still got the toll booth. You're still paying the toll. And it was a very close election. The polling was very, very close. And a week before the election, to try to push it over the edge to get people to agree to this transportation plan, the governor of the state declared the Georgia 400 toll was coming down. A week before the election. He said, it's done. It's over. We're tearing it down. You can drive without paying the toll. And they tore it down. And it was his way of showing voters, you see, we can do these things. Vote for the transportation plan, and the temporary tax will be temporary, just like 400. Well, the result was exactly the opposite. People looked at what the governor was doing a week before the election and said, well, this is cynical opportunism. There's no way I'm supporting this plan now. And they killed it. They killed his plan as punishment for his opportunism. The irony is they're now building toll roads along Georgia 400, having gotten rid of the toll. Those of you who are listening in Tucson, Arizona, you're having a WTF moment wondering what on earth does toll roads have to do with anything in my life? Masks? Those of you in Las Vegas listening, masks? The toll road has everything to do with masks. I'm a professional. I will string these things together. The governor of the state of Georgia, in a very close race, where people were saying, look at the toll road, it was temporary, and it's still there, it's paid for, and it's still there. A week before the election says, voters, I, the governor, shall tear down the tolls and show you that the government can keep its word. Now go vote for my plan. And the voters were so enraged by the cynicism of the move, they killed his plan. It's been obvious for a year now, masks really weren't doing any good. Not only were masks not doing any good, the elite who demanded you wear the masks are not wearing the masks. Stacey Abrams perhaps deserves an award for really showing it. And Gavin Newsom and the mayor of Los Angeles and Elise Slotnick, the congresswoman from Michigan, and the mayor of Washington and the mayor of San Francisco, and all of these Democratic politicians, they deserve some sort of prize for exposing the cynicism. And so now, as a voter backlash builds against the Democrats, in part because of the masks, suddenly, miracle of miracles, the science, it has changed. We can get rid of the masks now. Actually, no, not today, next week or next month. It depends on which state you live in. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, after weeks of people ridiculing him for not wearing his mask at the Rams 49ers game, now says, you know what, we'll get rid of the indoor mask mandate here in California now. After all, the science, it has changed. And because the science has changed, we can get rid of the masks. Really? When exactly did the science change? When did the science of masking change? Did it change yesterday? Did it change last week? Did it change last month and you're just now seeing it? Or did it change because the polling changed? It's amazing what the internal polling of the Democrats must show for so many Democratic governors. Delaware, New Jersey, California. I believe just this morning I saw New York. They're scrapping the masks. For months, it's been obvious we didn't need it. For months, it's been obvious, particularly in school settings, there was no need. And yet, now suddenly they're doing it. They're going to scrap the masks. They're going to scrap the masks in schools. Why? Because parents are furious at this point. Parents are livid. It has nothing to do with the science changing. It has everything to do with the polling changing. Here's Lena Wynn on CNN last night.
There actually is a harm that we should be discussing of children continuing to mask. That doesn't mean that masking doesn't have its place for children when there are very high rates of hospitalization. If we get a new variant in the future that children are particularly susceptible to, we may want to bring masks back. But we should also be intellectually honest and say that masking has had a cost, especially for the youngest learners, people with English as a second language, children with learning disabilities. There has been a cost to them. So the risk-benefit calculation has really changed.
Really? You don't say. The risk has suddenly changed. We knew this a while back. We knew this a year ago. And you'll notice her risk cost analysis. She was also one of the ones on, the science says, or the science changed. Yes, the scientific data changes, but it's the polling that really matters. And what's so funny here is that the White House is behind the curveball. This is Jen Psaki, White House press secretary. Listen to this.
If you could just clarify, I know you've talked about this a little bit already. Do you think that at some point in the future, even if that point isn't now, it would be appropriate for there to be updated federal guidelines just to avoid confusion? I think the administration has been clear that on other issues there are sort of messaging issues that could have been a little bit more clear coming from the administration. So on this issue, do you think that that might be appropriate?
Well, the guidance is very clear, which is that we recommend masking in schools. That is the recommendation from the CDC. It is also true that at some point when the science and the data warrants, of course, our hope is that that's no longer the recommendation, and they are continually assessing that. But the guidance is very clear. It is also true that it has always been up to local school districts to make determinations about how to implement these policies.
The White House still wants you to mask. By the way, MSNBC wants you to mask.
Do you think it's time for school mask mandates to end nationwide. I live with kids who are more than willing to wear their masks, and it's my parents who complain about my children having to wear masks, but my kids don't mind it.
Morning, Stephanie. Not yet. So here on February 8th, not yet. But I do think that as we proceed March 15th towards April 1st, which I think will be a watershed moment for the country, where we will be truly at an endemic phase based on all forecasts, based on where we are currently at right now, which it doesn't feel that way.
Not yet. No, not yet. Randy Weingarten, the teachers union boss.
Well, that's why I'm saying that we believe in an off-ramp. I asked Dr. Cardona and Dr. Walensky to start planning for an off-ramp in November, pre-Omicron. But then you had the Omicron surge, and the masks were back on, and then the K95 masks were back on. So the real question becomes, how do we make sure that people can plan for it? And what are the measures so that everybody knows? So it doesn't feel like it's based upon politics. It feels like it's based upon making sure that there's no transmission in school. And it feels like
no transmission at school might be impossible. She wants people at mask forever. It's going to feel political. Y'all, the Democrats saw what happened in Virginia. Now they've seen Glenn Youngkin come in and they realize the parents have his back. Not only that, they're seeing school board elections go against the Democrats. There's a school board out in Colorado where every liberal on the school board was booted off by liberal parents because of critical theory and masks. There's a great parental revolt, and the Democrats don't know what to do. And so suddenly, after 2 years of dogmatic insistence that you must wear the masks at all times, they're getting rid of the masks as quickly as they can. Delaware, New Jersey, New York, California, they're all like, oh, we got to get rid of the mask now. It's time. We can get rid of it. We're over the hump. Your data metrics that you've been using don't say you're over the hump, but your internal polling does. But here's the problem for the Democrats. The toll road on Georgia 400. What happened is it provoked even more of a voter backlash. It provoked more of a voter backlash because they saw that toll road and they're like, are you kidding me? We've been here with this toll forever and you can just snap your finger and tear it down and you never bothered to do it? You're only doing it because your polling changed and you want this to pass? And the voters were livid. I suspect the same thing will happen here. You mean you could have taken the mask down all the time? You could have gotten our kids out of masks at the beginning of the school year and you left them there until you needed us to vote for you and the polling was changing against you. And so you did this. The voters will be furious. You've kept their kids hostage to your pandemic policies, and then the science didn't change, your polling changed, and because your polling changed, now suddenly you think it's safe to come out from behind the mask. The voters are not going to like this because voters, they may be stupid, but they can detect BS, and they know you've been full of it.